It began in the small town of Millstone, Indiana, where life moved slowly and neighbors still watched out for one another. On the surface, it seemed like the perfect place to raise a family. But behind one quiet home on Juniper Lane, something terrible was happening. It started with a simple call to the local police department. A concerned woman named Linda, who lived 2 houses down, reported that she hadn't seen 9-year-old Ava Reed in over a week. She explained that Ava was usually outside every afternoon, riding her pink bicycle or playing with her jump rope on the driveway. But lately, nothing. No laughter, no movement, no sign of the little girl. It was as if she had vanished. When officers arrived to perform a welfare check, they found Ava's mother, Karen Reed, at home. She answered the door dressed neatly and appeared calm. Her explanation was simple. Ava had gone to stay with her aunt for a while. She said it was a last-minute trip and Ava would be back soon. Karen smiled politely and offered no signs of distress. But something felt wrong. The officers noted her overly controlled tone and how she kept glancing over her shoulder into the house, as if afraid of what might be seen. Still, without a warrant and lacking clear evidence, they had to leave. Karen's story didn't sit well with one of the responding officers, who later followed up by calling the aunt Karen had mentioned. The woman, clearly confused, denied that Ava was with her. In fact, she hadn't seen Ava or Karen in months. That call triggered alarm bells. Now it wasn't just a missing child, it was a possible lie covering something darker. The police tried returning to the house the next day, but Karen didn't answer the door. Her car was gone, and no one knew where she had gone. Neighbors reported seeing her leave early that morning, carrying several bags and looking rushed. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. It was then that authorities issued a formal search request and filed a missing persons report for Ava. Back at the house, officers questioned more neighbors. Several recalled hearing strange sounds at night, muffled cries, sudden thuds, and one woman remembered a child's voice sobbing around 2 a.m. a few nights ago. These weren't isolated incidents. One man mentioned how Ava used to wave at him every day from the window, but lately, the curtains had been drawn, and the house felt strangely lifeless. A few even admitted they had been suspicious for some time but were unsure if they should get involved. It didn't take long for the community to begin whispering. What had really happened inside that house? Where was Ava? And why had Karen left without warning? The once peaceful neighborhood was now filled with unease. Parents held their children closer. More calls poured into the police department, all pointing back to one chilling possibility. Something terrible had been going on inside that house, and they were only just beginning to uncover the truth. The officers returned with a search warrant 3 days after Karen vanished. With the house now legally accessible, the team stepped inside, unaware of the horrors they were about to find. The first thing that hit them was the smell, a thick, suffocating stench of rot, mildew, and something else they couldn't quite identify. The air was heavy, like it hadn't been circulated in weeks. All the windows had been sealed with black plastic garbage bags, stapled tight so no light could escape or enter. Even in daylight, the interior was dark and unnatural. The living room was eerily bare. No couch, no pictures on the walls, no signs of family life. Just a thin, stained mattress on the floor and a pile of old blankets. The floors were sticky, and the walls were covered in odd smudges, tiny handprints, some higher than others, some smudged in strange patterns. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a place where someone had tried to erase the idea of comfort. As the officers moved deeper into the hallway, they noticed something even more alarming. Each bedroom door had external locks, metal latches bolted from the outside, as if to keep someone in rather than out. They opened one door and found a small, windowless room. There was a bucket in the corner, used as a toilet. The walls were scratched deeply, layers of wallpaper peeled and shredded. In the center of the room, a child's drawing lay crumpled on the floor, half-torn and stained. It showed a little girl standing under a black sun, stick figures surrounding her with frowns. No furniture, no toys except a few broken pieces of plastic. Just the overwhelming sense that whoever stayed in this room had been locked inside for long stretches of time. Behind the closet wall in that same room, a faint draft revealed something hidden. With some effort, officers pried the panel loose and discovered a narrow crawlspace, no bigger than a coffin. It was lined with dirty blankets and had scratches etched into the wood along the sides. Inside, they found a small composition notebook, the cover torn but still readable. It was a journal, handwritten in a child's shaky pen. Page after page revealed a timeline of suffering, days without food, punishments for crying, screams that brought only worse treatment. There were mentions of the dark place and being quiet or else. The final page ended abruptly with a smudged word, help. Back in the kitchen, officers noticed more disturbing details: padlocks on the fridge, all the knives missing, every window nailed shut from the inside. It became clear that this house had not been abandoned overnight. It had been a prison long before Karen disappeared. The presence of chains in the laundry room, a soiled mattress in the basement, and deep grooves in the floor where something had been dragged painted a terrifying picture. Ava hadn't just gone missing. She had been held, isolated, and hurt. And judging by what they found, it wasn't recent. This had been going on for years. The investigation quickly escalated as the evidence inside the house grew more disturbing. Every room held signs of long-term abuse. The chains found in the laundry room weren't just lying around, they were bolted to the wall, attached to iron rings worn from use. In the basement, detectives uncovered a wooden post with ropes tied around it, frayed and stained. Along the walls, crude markings were scratched into the concrete, counting days, perhaps even weeks. It became clear that this wasn't just neglect, it was calculated cruelty. Detectives pulled Karen Reed's files and began piecing together her history. She had moved through several towns over the past 10 years. Each move followed a similar pattern. She'd arrive quietly, rent a home in a secluded area, enroll Ava in school briefly, and then suddenly withdraw her, citing homeschooling or family emergencies. Some school officials had reported concerns: bruises on Ava's arms, long absences, erratic behavior, but nothing ever stuck. Without solid proof, the system let them slip away each time. Digging deeper, the team found an old report from when Ava was 4. A neighbor had complained about constant crying and suspected neglect. At the time, Karen had convinced Child Protective Services that Ava was simply sensitive and suffered from night terrors. The case was dropped within weeks. Karen always seemed one step ahead, always prepared with just enough charm and plausible excuses to escape consequences. Forensic experts began analyzing the house. They confirmed blood traces in the crawlspace and basement matched Ava's DNA. Strands of her hair were found stuck to tape on the inside of the crawlspace door. The notebook Ava had written in was treated as key evidence. Handwriting experts verified it matched school assignments from years prior. Her words painted a vivid, horrifying image. She had been starved, beaten, and isolated for long stretches of time. She had pleaded for someone to find her, to listen. But no one had. While processing the evidence, detectives also found several receipts and burner phone records hidden in a shoebox. One receipt led them to a storage unit Karen had rented under a fake name in the next county. Inside, they found boxes filled with Ava's belongings: old clothes, school photos, drawings, even her birth certificate. It looked like Karen had been preparing to erase all signs of Ava's identity. The media latched onto the case. News stations called it the torture house of Millstone. The town that once felt safe and quiet was now marked by national attention and horror. Parents questioned how something so dark could have been missed. The community mourned for a girl most of them had never met, their guilt mixing with outrage. Even though Karen remained missing, the case against her was growing stronger by the hour. Every new piece of evidence made it clear that Ava hadn't simply disappeared. She had suffered in silence for years while the world went on around her. The question now wasn't whether Karen had hurt her. It was how far she had gone, and whether Ava was still alive. 3 weeks after the story made national headlines, a tip came in from a gas station attendant in northern Michigan. He recognized Karen Reed from a photo broadcast on the news. She had stopped in days earlier, using a different name and paying in cash. She looked thinner, tired, and wore a large hoodie despite the summer heat. Surveillance footage confirmed it was her. Authorities launched a full-scale manhunt in the surrounding area, deploying search teams across the nearby forests and small towns. 2 days later, Karen was found hiding in an abandoned hunting cabin deep in the woods. She surrendered without resistance, sitting silently on the porch as officers approached. Karen was taken into custody and transported back to Indiana. During processing, she remained calm and eerily composed. Her mugshot showed no fear or regret. Instead, she stared coldly into the camera, almost detached. Investigators hoped that now, with her in custody, they would finally learn what happened to Ava. But Karen refused to speak. Not a single word about her daughter, the house, or the evidence found inside. Her silence was as chilling as her crimes. Psychologists were brought in to assess her mental state. While she displayed no signs of psychosis, they noted traits of narcissism, manipulation, and emotional detachment. Karen had built a life of isolation and control. She didn't just hurt Ava, she dominated every aspect of her world. Experts believed she saw her daughter not as a child, but as a possession, something she could mold, use, or discard. Old acquaintances were contacted, and more of Karen's past began to surface. A former boyfriend recalled how she isolated herself from friends and cut off all contact with her own family after giving birth. She often spoke of wanting to raise Ava without interference, claiming no one else could be trusted. He remembered strange rules, locked doors, and Ava being punished for the smallest things. After their breakup, he tried to report her to child services, but nothing ever came of it. Detectives pieced together a timeline. Karen had likely started abusing Ava years ago, increasing the severity as time passed. She kept her hidden from the world under the pretense of homeschooling, all while slowly erasing her from any public record. What disturbed them most was how methodical she had been. Nothing was spontaneous. Everything, from the locks, to the crawlspace, to the fake identities, was part of a long, calculated plan. Even after her arrest, Karen never showed emotion. During court hearings, she remained quiet, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Reporters described her as blank, as if nothing about the situation touched her. Parents of missing children across the country watched in disbelief. This wasn't just a story of abuse, it was a story of control, deception, and cold cruelty. Everyone hoped that with Karen in custody, the truth about Ava's fate would finally be revealed. But Karen kept her secret close, and as days turned to weeks, hope began to fade. The world wanted justice. But what they really wanted was an answer. Where was Ava? The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A man named Russell Clay, who had once dated Karen briefly years ago, saw the news coverage and contacted the police. He told investigators about something Karen had said during one of their weekend trips. She had taken him to an old farmhouse property she claimed belonged to her grandfather. It was deep in the woods, miles from the nearest town, and nearly impossible to find without directions. Karen had joked that no one would ever find someone out there. At the time, he thought it was a weird comment, but now it chilled him. Detectives followed the lead immediately. The property, located in a remote area of southern Indiana, had been left abandoned for years. The house itself had collapsed, its roof caved in and walls rotting. Search teams arrived with cadaver dogs, combing the overgrown land and surrounding forest. They found a rusted water well near the edge of the property, mostly hidden beneath weeds and brush. One of the dogs alerted at the edge of the well. Investigators lowered cameras and flashlights into the dark, narrow shaft. What they saw confirmed their worst fears. At the bottom of the well, wrapped in layers of plastic and cloth, were skeletal remains. The medical examiner worked carefully to retrieve them. Dental records later confirmed that the remains belonged to Ava Reed. Forensic analysis showed clear signs of long-term malnutrition, multiple healed and unhealed fractures, and ultimately, blunt force trauma to the head as the cause of death. The condition of the remains suggested she had been dead for nearly 6 months. That meant Karen had continued living in the house for months with Ava already gone, hiding the truth from everyone. Karen was charged with first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, and unlawful imprisonment. Her trial became one of the most widely watched in recent history. Prosecutors laid out every detail of the case: the journal, the blood evidence, the chains, the lies, and finally, the discovery of Ava's body. Karen showed no emotion through any of it. She refused to speak in her defense and sat in silence while witnesses described the suffering Ava had endured. The jury deliberated for less than a day. Karen was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was taken away quietly, offering no final words, no reaction, not even a glance toward the courtroom. The public called her a monster. Reporters labeled her the evil mother of Millstone. But the truth was even more disturbing. She had been a quiet predator hiding in plain sight, destroying her child behind closed doors while the world looked the other way. The house on Juniper Lane was torn down. A small memorial was placed where it once stood, with flowers, stuffed animals, and pictures of Ava. Her story became a symbol, a reminder of the importance of listening, watching, and never ignoring the signs. In the end, justice came, but it came too late. Ava was gone, and the world would never forget how.